The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus said to his disciples, "In those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from the sky, and the power in the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the end of the earth to the end of the sky. Learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branch becomes tender and sprouts leaves, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see these things happening, now that he is near at the gates. Amen, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But of that day, of hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus.
Gates have traditionally been places where people gather. This was especially true in the times past when towns and cities were surrounded by a wall. What's the reality in the land of Jesus? In a walled city or town, the gate was the only point where people can enter or live. It was the place to meet people. If you wanted to address the largest number of people possible, the gate of the city or town was the place to go. In the Jewish scriptures, there is a figure called Wisdom, a female figure. She has a message that she wants as many people as possible to hear. The book of Proverbs states, beside the gate, in front of the town, at the entrance of the portals, she cries out. She obviously wanted to reach as many people as possible, and so he went to the gate of the town. That image of the gate is in the gospel reading this morning. Jesus speaks there of the coming of the Son of Man. Really, he is doing reverence to himself, and he declares, now that he is near at the gate. Jesus uses that image of his presence at the gate to suggest his nearness to us. He will be present where people gather, not in some place, not in some remote place, but at the very place where the largest number of people come and go. His presence at the gate is a reassuring presence. He had just used the reassuring image of the fig tree that had been bare from the winter and whose tender branches suddenly began to grow supple and whose leaves began to emerge into the light. When people see this, they know that winter is passing and summer is approaching. The image of Jesus at the gate is meant to be a similarly reassuring image. Some kind of reassurance was needed because Jesus had just been painting a disturbing picture of great cosmic changes. And in the passage just prior to our gospel reading, he had spoken of the destruction of Jerusalem and his temple and the persecution of his followers. It was a rather grim and dark picture of what lay ahead. Jesus did not shy away from facing and naming the bitter realities of life, the suffering which lay ahead for himself and his followers, and indeed for the whole of creation. We can really only begin to deal with the darker side of life when we name it for what it is and face into it as best we can. The Gospel suggests that Jesus was better at this than his disciples, who were inclined to change the subject when Jesus spoke about these matters to them. Yet, while acknowledging and naming the darkest side of reality, Jesus also pointed to a light in that darkness. He assures his disciples that when the world, as they know, as they know it, appears to be collapsing, he will be coming with great power and glory to gather those who remain faithful to him. He will be the reassuring presence at the gates of their city, their town, their household, their lives. The message of today's gospel reading is essentially one of hope. Hope is not wishful thinking. It is not pretending that things are better than they are. Hope is the conviction that God's light shines in the awful darkness and that the darkness will not ultimately overcome it. Jesus is acknowledging that the gospel reading in the gospel reading that everything as we know is passing away. All of created reality is destined to pass away. Nothing in this world will endure. As Jesus says, heaven and earth will pass away. The term heaven and earth was a way of referring to everything created that exists. Jesus immediately goes to say, "My words will not pass away. My words will not pass away." His words will not pass away because he himself will not pass away. In our darkness moments, when our world when our world appears to be collapsing, when what we cherish most has been taken from us, he will be at the gate of our lives as a light in our darkness, as a companion in our way. In the book of Revelation, the risen Lord uses the image that is very similar to the one in today's gospel reading. I am standing at the door, knocking. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come into you and eat with you, and you with me. The Lord moves from the gate or the door to the table where we invite us to enter into communion with Him and draw life from Him, and then go forth and His hope fills messengers in our world.